All right, so welcome world culture students. Now, today we're going to talk a little bit to you about Rome. Specifically, we're going to talk about Rome as a city-state, a monarchy, the Roman Republic, and then the Roman Empire. As you listen to this lecture, make sure you are taking specific notes and answering any questions on your sheet. In addition, there will also be some time at the end for you to jot down some more questions about any of the content that you have here. Now, first, take a look at this very rudimentary timeline. The first is Rome as a monarchy. Rome as a monarchy is down here from about 800s BCE to about 509 BCE. We have the Roman Republic, which is approximately from 509 BCE to 27 BCE, and then eventually the Roman Empire, which is approximately 27 BCE to about the 400 CE, at least in Western Europe. So, rise of Rome. Take a look at the map that you see to the right. Around 1000 BCE, the region around Rome, and this is in present-day Italy, is settled. Now, according to their legend, it's founded by two brothers, Romulus and Remus. They were supposedly sons of the god of Mars, and they were raised by a she-wolf. As the story goes, Romulus and Remus fought, Romulus won, and then named the city after himself, Rome. What we do know is that by about 700 BCE, Rome was a major city-state on the Italian peninsula. Now, the Italian peninsula was populated by many Italic speakers. You had the Latins, the Sabines, the Umbrians, the Samnites, the Oscans, among others. But the most powerful at the time were the Etruscans. Now, as you can see, the Etruscans are located north of Rome. There's Rome right there on the Tiber River. And they expanded and came to influence Rome from about the 700s to about the 500s BCE. From the 700s BCE to 500s, as I said, Rome was a monarchy. Now, they had a kingdom. Now, the Etruscans were the ones who were mostly these kings. They dominated a lot of aspects of Roman life. The kings ruled the city-state pretty overwhelmingly by themselves. Now, there was a Senate, but it was considered just an advisory council to the king and didn't necessarily have any real power. Eventually, you have a transition from a monarchy to a republic. Around 500, 509 BCE, the people of Rome overthrow the king, and they formed a republic. Right now, please pause the video for 1 second and jot down what you think, or how you think, a republic is different from the Greek democracy that you learned about before. Okay, so back that a little bit more about the Senate. Over time, the Senate would gain more power until they were the dominant force in the Roman Republic. Now, the Etruscans, they don't go away, but basically they're just assimilated into the Roman Republic in around the 400s BCE, and people start to refer to themselves as, well, Romans. So, the republic itself. So in a republic, people choose leaders. Now, the citizens elected their leaders, and they were advised by the Roman Senate. These leaders were called consuls, kind of like a president, except there were two. All right, there were two of them, and they're directly elected by the people. On the other hand, you also had the huge kind of body which made and created laws, and that was called the Senate. Now, the Senate was made up of male landowners, and these were people who served for life. They were extremely wealthy, and they were from very good families. Roman law itself was guaranteed through something that we call the 12 tables. Now, we're going to analyze some of the 12 tables in class next time, and so you'll see a little bit about how much they could influence our modern day. They form the basis of the Roman Constitution, and in ways they possibly influenced our Constitution as well. Now, we'll read some of these in class, so please stay for that. Important thing to remember, though, Greek democracy, republic form of government, and Roman law were important contributions to modern-day society. So, let's talk a brief moment about Roman society. Now, Roman life itself was very hierarchical, very stratified. It had many different layers. But the conditions in Rome were always characterized by this struggle between the patricians and the plebeians. Now, the patricians were the land-holding aristocracy. These guys trace their ancestry all the way back to the early Roman kingdom, and they're the ones that make up the Senate. They have most of the power. But the plebeians are far more numerous. These are regular citizens and just general commoners. Now, over time, the plebeians gained more and more power, sometimes through kind of some tricky means. Now, obviously, the Senate was expanding the Republic at this time. We'll watch a slide on that in a second. And as they're expanding, they obviously need the plebeians to fight. They're the foot soldiers. And at one point, they're about to start a huge battle, and the plebeians just refuse to fight unless they're granted more rights. These types of things happened all the time. Now, eventually, they're given something called a plebeian council, and this council ended up being very, very, very powerful. It was run by these people who were elected by the plebeians called tribunes. tribunes could create laws in the plebeian council, and they were even allowed to veto laws from the Senate at times when the plebeian council had quite a bit of power. Here's a quick map that just shows you the extent of the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. It goes from this kind of darker pink to eventually this lighter pink in 133 BCE. Around 44 BCE, the Republic itself is starting to splinter, and we are going to see a transition into an empire. This yellow shows where the empire expanded. The green shows where the empire expanded after CE 14, and then finally you even see some expansion in the modern-day Middle East and Asia. It's no wonder they called the Mediterranean Sea the Roman Lake. So, expansion of the empire. The single biggest event that helped the Roman Republic expand were the Punic Wars. Now, this was 3 different phases of the war, but the wars lasted for about 100 years, from about 264 BCE to about 146 BCE. Now, these pitted the Roman Republic, which is obviously still mostly on the Italian peninsula, versus the Carthaginian Empire, which was actually the powerhouse of the Mediterranean at the time, and they were based in North Africa. There was extremely fierce fighting over 1,000 years. Carthage lost most phases of this, especially the first and the second, had to give up some land, ended up getting some back. By the Third Carthaginian War, Carthage really isn't powerful anymore. Some people say that Rome just started it as an excuse to conquer them once and for all. They march on Carthage, they destroy the city, they kill the men, they sell the women and children into slavery, and as the kind of legend goes, they sprinkled salt on the land around it so nothing would ever grow there again. Now, regardless of how true that is, what we do know is that because of this war, Rome gained a lot of territory, the Roman Republic was transferred into a powerhouse of the Mediterranean, and this is really considered the height of the Roman Republic. Now, eventually the Republic, the senators start to get a little bit corrupt. People have been in power for a long time, and in steps a man who is really popular with a lot of citizens of the Roman Empire. This was a man named Julius Caesar. He was a general who had expanded and fought in present-day France, who'd expanded the Republic's boundaries. He came back to Rome. He never really declared himself a king, but he didn't really mind if people kind of treated him like that. The Senate was worried that he was a threat to their power, and they actually killed him in 44 BCE. Now, for the next kind of basically 13, 14 years, there's a long story short, there's kind of a civil war throughout Roman lands. And sometimes there's shared power, sometimes they fight each other, but the end result is actually that Caesar's nephew, a man named Octavius, he actually wins, and he takes the name Caesar Augustus in honor of his uncle, Julius Caesar, and this is when we really consider Rome becoming officially an empire. Now, the first Roman emperor, probably around 31 BCE, but technically the Senate didn't crown him until around 27 BCE, but at this point, he's the one who has all the power, and we would now refer to this as the Roman Empire. This kicks off what some people refer to as the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. The question is, peace for whom? Because this was a time when Rome was expanding its boundaries and conquering peoples on all edges of its border. I doubt they thought of this as a Roman peace. But this started under Caesar Augustus, and it continues for another 200 years. Now, one thing that we mentioned before is that the Romans loved themselves some Greek. When they conquered Greece, they absorbed and they adopted quite a bit of it. They tried to discover some of old Athens and Sparta as well. So, here is the extent of the Roman Empire. I mean, this thing was huge. You can see, and eventually these are going to play a role, Germania is just a collection of Germanic tribes that are going to come in conflict with the empire eventually. They expanded it all the way into present-day Britain. You see some major roads that they used in order to move troops and supplies throughout their empire. It was enormous. There's no other way to say it. So, we do need to say one quick thing about Christianity. Now, we discussed Christianity when we talked about the 3 monotheistic religions that originated in the Middle East. We know that Christianity, these guys left the Middle East and they went and spread throughout the Roman Empire and started to spread Christianity. Now, Christianity, just like Judaism in a way, was persecuted very highly under these Roman empires as a threat to their authority, until about the 300 CE. 2 guys become very important. One, Constantine, who technically makes it okay to be a Christian, and then Theodosius, who will eventually make Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. We'll discuss this a bit more next time. But as the empire declines, Christianity spreads to the far reaches of the empire. The decline of the empire itself is best described as kind of a combination of internal versus external forces. You might ask, this is an enormous, powerful empire. How does something like that fall? Well, really it doesn't fall, it declines. It's not like they woke up one day and were like, where's the empire? I don't know, it fell. That's not the way it works. Internally, there was a lot of strife and a lot of corruption. Constantine actually moved the capital to a new city that he called Constantinople in the east. One of the reasons it was Rome was constantly under threat of attack from these Germanic tribes. But this obviously weakened the western part of the empire. He tried to restructure the empire and reform it, but it was pretty much too late. It had just become corrupt. A lot of these officials had been in power for a very, very long time. Now, there were also plagues that spread throughout the Roman Empire. As a result of this, people fled the cities, and once again, that weakened the empire even further. Ultimately, though, it was external forces that ended up really kind of sealing the deal for Rome to decline, and that was from this constant attack from these Germanic tribes in the northwest part of the empire. So, remnants, the result. In 400 CE, Rome itself is sacked by Germanic tribes a couple different times, and the western part of the Roman Empire loses most of its central organization. Really, it ceases to become an empire at this point. Now, the Eastern Roman Empire, which, remember, is the capital's in Constantinople, by the 600s, this is going to be known as the Byzantine Empire. But basically, it continued on for another 1,000 years until its conquest by the Ottoman Turks in 1453 CE. So, that is our brief crash course to Rome. Now, before you turn this video off, please take some time to jot down at least 3 questions inspired by the information from this PowerPoint. What was unexplained? What more would you like to know? What is unclear? I will be looking for your 3 questions, as well as making sure that you have your notes filled out when we come in next class. Next class, we'll be reviewing this and also analyzing some primary sources. Thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful night.